Welcome back to the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falash, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week because I've got a guest with a great story and a growth mindset here today. And our listeners tell us that these are the stories, these real world journeys that help them feel more supported as they carve out their own paths. So since I like to think that we're all students in this world and we should be open to learning what works and often what doesn't from our colleagues and peers, we've invited today's guest to share with us what has and what hasn't worked for him, how he's worked with experts over the years, as well as some changes in ownership within his practices recently. Now, you know, we share a lot of education on this show, best practices, strategy, market outlook, and we do it from our own lens, keeping that end goal in mind, whatever that happens to be for you, of course. And that's all in an effort to best equip you to make decisions for your business. But today we're going to ask our guest to make a shift and share his view, his perspectives, and his experience because he's made a habit of leaning into those experts throughout his years in practice, and it's changed the way his business has grown. So stay with me here because you'll want to hear from him in a minute. I've also invited Mark Flock, Polaris Partnership and Equity Solutions Executive, back to the show because he's been directly involved with today's guest in his business, and he has his own perspectives to share, of course. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ben Tolley, founder and CEO of Tolley Dental. Ben and Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Glad to be back, Jamie.
Good to see you both. So, Mark, I'm actually going to let you kick off really quickly because you and Ben can kind of intro this. I'd like to learn, Ben, about how you arrived at where you are, like your start in dentistry. But first, tell me about what you all were working on and how you met, and then we'll kind of get back into your journey.
Yeah, so Ben and I briefly met, and I'll let Ben take it from there because it's really, like I said, his story for the most part, but kind of had I wouldn't say a dilemma with respect to wanting to consider a partnership solution for his two lead associates and just wasn't sure if he was ready to offer partnership or not. And it was referred to me, but needed a solution that we offered here at Polaris that was not able to be offered, obviously, anywhere else in the marketplace. So we were able to help him out and take him through the journey. But Ben, I'll kind of, like I said, this is kind of your show because a lot of clients hear from my perspective, what I go through and how everything I do is customized for our clients. But really, I want clients and listeners to really hear from your perspective what you went through, even before reaching out to me and having the initial conversation to going through the process with me so they can hear it through your lens. So kind of want to maybe start with, how you decided to really offer partnership. What got you to that point? Where have you been? And then what got you to that point?
Yeah. As far as partnership is concerned, I really had never considered partnership. And I'll kind of start you guys out from the beginning and make it brief. I took over my father's practice in 2006 when I graduated from dental school. And my dad had a mild stroke in 2005 and had lost the right side to the stroke. And we hired other dentists to work in there until I got out at age 27 and, inherited his older staff. And there was a lot of growth there, and there were some inflection points. I hired some other consulting firms to help me do some chart auditing, get things off the ground, get some technology in there. It was a very antiquated office. I know you guys remember the old X-rays that you had to use the developer. And, you had the big full mouth series that you hang up on the wall. And, my dad had a big cuspidor that the patient spit all over and all that stuff. So it was a really antiquated situation. And, my hygienist was 74 years old. The whole practice was there when I was born. So, it was a really interesting dynamic. But I chose to move back to my hometown because I had a real opportunity. And I'm like, if I'm going to move back to this town, I really want to try to make a big impact. And it was slow. There was just a lot of slog there. There's a lot of learning, but I had a lot of people throughout my journey at different levels that really helped me get there, from strain consulting, from, there's a company called Dental Coaches. Just along the stages, I've really had some impactful people help me my fractional CFO, who you know and you've interfaced with, Mark, Jessica from Maven,
Yep.
and also Heron Desports at Next Level Executive helped me. But all of those people have really helped me become who I am, along with helping me through mistakes and helping me, see things that could happen, much like you guys did with our partnership. And we can get more into that as we go along. For the short and long of it, I grew that practice from 3 chairs to 4 chairs, and then bought a 10-chair office in 2014 and bought a patient base in 2013 from a retiring dentist. A lot of little details in there, but I bought them one patient at a time for $200 a patient. Got them in, and they were, I think we got about 100 patients, or 1 to 200 patients, I think. And that really helped to kind of, get things churning. And we built that practice up. And now I have another location in Woodstock, Virginia, which I bought as a fire sale right before COVID. So that was interesting.
Ah,
But it's really taken off, and we went from 4 chairs to 11 chairs. Now I have a total of 31 chairs, and 5 associates, 11 hygienists, a staff of 40. And I feel like we're at the beginning. I feel like it's starting blocks are here. But as far as the partnership is concerned, you guys just did a heck of a job. And I guess if you wanted to lead me into some of that.
yeah, because giving up any kind of ownership in your business, regardless of the size of it, that's a tough decision to make. And I know it has to do with you moving out of the chair a little bit, taking on the CEO role as you're moving into that too. But what made you decide to offer partnership to your other providers or associates at the time, given the trajectory of your business?
Well, to be totally clear and honest, like I said, I was anti-partnership for a long time. And primarily my father told me, he said, look, partnerships fall apart. Don't do it. All that. Plus, I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to self-fund this practice. So I don't have any business debt on the practice. So it's nice. At that point, I was like, well, I just don't need partners or anything like that. But slowly but surely, in the circles that I'm in and the podcasts I've listened to and the groups I'm in, I started to see the value to that. And that coincided with my associates, who are highly deserving of a partnership, approached me, and I started to kind of entertain it. And the more I got involved with learning about it, and then I found Mark because I think I've listened to every podcast that he's ever been on ever, and I feel like I was really kind of getting it, and I'm like, there is a lot of power to this, and not only is it great for both parties. I have some exceptional candidates to choose from, and the two that I've chosen for the partnership were very high producers, super dentists, do everything, have a great attitude, have great rapport with patients, and really fit the mold. And it's really about establishing trust. And as far as establishing trust, Mark was able to really come into our office, and he established my trust. First off, it was more like really talk through every little detail, and he saw where my hesitations were and walked me through scenarios and pitfalls. And these partnerships can be fraught with danger. There's all kinds of different things, and just the level of detail that we went into in the program was just amazing.
One thing, Jamie, I think the comment there is that, having the calls early on with both of those prospective candidates or your associates, Dr. Tolley, I can usually tell, if based on conversations with you, based on conversations with them, if it's something that makes sense for both parties. And when I say it that way is, just because you raise your hand and say, I want to be a partner in your business, Dr. Tolley or Ben, and go through all this, doesn't mean that it's going to work long term for them, because their mindset might be looking at one thing while you're looking at another, and those visions don't align. And that alignment is key, whether you're a 1% partner, a 10% partner, or a 40% partner, or if you have multiple partners for that matter. And I could tell, in speaking with both of your associates, that there's a ton of respect, trust, alignment, and kind of what you're looking to do, and also they're very, very strong producers with a very, I think they were essentially aligned. And that was one thing that was important to kind of keep moving forward and recommend what we did for them. Because sometimes I get on those calls and it's like, I don't see this working out. And I have to have a difficult conversation with the principal owner like yourself, or have a conversation with that associate saying, hey, this is actually what partnership means, and having to educate them for 30 to 60 minutes on a call. And that might not make sense for them. They see it as one thing, but it's actually something different. So that's kind of part of the early on process of what I go through. It's not just working with, the Bens out there. It's actually working with the associates. And I noticed it right away with your two that it was going to be, well, it should be, a good fit long term. I can never have that crystal ball, but better than most that I have conversations with.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that you did that was impactful for me is, in the first probably 4 or 5 conversations, emails, Zoom meetings that you and I had, it was just so impactful because you were really listening to what my desires were and kind of feeling out like where I was going with things. And you and I together engineered this thing to be more of like, okay, what can they afford and what is impactful for them rather than an arbitrary, oh, I want 10% or I want 50. What does that mean? And backing that out from what our valuation was, we basically said, okay, they can afford X amount. What percentage will that get them given this realistic EBITDA? And that's where the trust came in, is you did the valuation and chose the EBITDA and you explained that to them that this is a fair valuation from both sides, 50-50, and that was super important to me. And that was the clarity that established the trust and continues to build. And I think that's the part that was the most impactful that you guys did, is it helped us, you know, day over day become even more trusting in each other. And even going into the partnership, it's just, it became something I never thought it would be. You guys pulled some things out of us that we didn't know we had, as far as trusting each other and building something. And this thing is no longer about me. Tolley Dental is different. And these 2 women that I brought on bleed Tolley Dental blue. They are in. They love it. Their patient bases love them, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a growth track and a growth journey.
Well, it sounds like you've got some great partners in the business that are ready to support your growth. And I know you've got some of that in mind too. But before we get to that, and you've alluded to this a little bit, what was kind of that deciding factor for you in working with Polaris and Mark as you wanted to facilitate things for you and your team? Like, what were some of the things that helped you decide? And I know trust is a big one, which then leads to Mark's conversations and really that time he takes to learn clients.
Mhm.
But I kind of want to hear from you too, outside of trust, what were some of the deciding factors that helped you trust?
Yeah, the deciding factor that really helped me trust Mark and Polaris, and like I said, I've listened to him for a long time, and I've known him through circles. Just in talking to him and getting on the same page so quickly on all of these items, and just seeing how he handled certain situations and how he was completely fair in all ways. And just really, I just listened to him and what his mantras are and the people he surrounds himself with, like DeWalker, and the way that he was able to interface with Ryan Metzler, who is parts of my other group. So it's like, it was a beautiful community. And it's almost like, it really is, I hate to say it, but it's like a dream team, right? You have all facets and they all have strengths, and they're all at the top of their game in their certain column. And to see all that come together and interface the way that it did, I had one Zoom meeting where I think I had 5 or 6 people on it, and they all knew each other before I ever knew them. And I'm the dumbest person in the room. It's crazy. It was really, really, it was really awesome. And quite humbling to see all these people there for me. And it was really nice. And, even the way that Mark was able to interface with my fractional CFO, Jessica, to figure out distributions and how that looks. And the way they were all able to work with Ryan Metzler, who is just a genius dental attorney that really does well. And he was able to explain things well to my associates too. And, I'd heard of all these guys and I'd heard them on podcasts, and just, I started to feel that this is the right connection for me to not only trust them, but for my associates to trust them, and all of us to trust each other. And it's based on clarity, and being kind. So I think that was all part of it.
That's a big part. That's a word used, clarity, that we like to use as well. And it sounds like you've got some really well synchronized support in a team that, it's great that they knew each other before, because then they know what to expect in terms of how they can work together and work with your team as well. But we all know that these types of situations don't come without their little road bumps.
I really think that, it's true that, your business is built on the number of awkward conversations that you can have, or difficult conversations that you can have.
Absolutely.
And I think that there is a lot of strength in that. We really didn't dance around anything. We had some serious talks and some serious times, but good things come from that if they're handled correctly. And I think that we did have some of those questions, but what was nice about that is Mark could answer those in ways that I couldn't a lot of times, because I didn't have an experience with partnership and I didn't know how to handle things in the right way. So I'd refer to him in a lot of times, and I learned a lot from that. I'm not saying that I could handle to that level now, but it was just nice to have that third party there to not only legitimize what we're doing, but to be there to soften certain conversations and make it make sense for both parties, if you see what I'm saying there.
Sure. Well, you've got all that experience under your belt, Mark, and I know from talking to other clients, how you communicate it is what matters.
The authenticity in that, and also in talking with DeWalker as well. These guys really knew what they were doing, and it was just dialed in, and they've seen it all. And even talking with guys like Ryan Metzler, he's seen it all. They've seen things fall apart. What can we do? It's a marriage at the end of the day. It really is. And this, you don't want to say that this is the prenup, but it's kind of like, hey, let's get all this out there so we're aware of it, and it really makes for a comfortable path moving forward. I'm more optimistic than I ever thought I would be with partnerships. And as time goes on, we'll probably entertain more, if it makes sense and they're the right fit. And I'm really surprised that I'm as confident moving forward as I am with future partnership.
That's great to hear. And speaking of some of those little speed bumps along the way, were there any surprises along the way for you? And how were those addressed? What about legal structure?
We got out of everything was new to me. So I wouldn't say it was a surprise, but, we got way out ahead of things through through emails and conversations. And if I didn't ask the question, he already knew what questions that I was going to ask. So it was we got way out ahead of that stuff. There really weren't any real surprises. I thought that the presentation that you guys gave in-house was probably the most impactful part of the whole thing, because the associates were able to see you in person, and the education that you did for them, I got a lot from that too, even though I have a fair amount of business education. When you guys talked about what EBITDA actually is, how that translates into the valuation, the pro forma, what this looks like with a sale, what this may look like down the road, what dividends could look like. And there were realistic projections. It wasn't like pie in the sky, smoke and mirrors. It was like, okay, realistically, this is what it should be or could be. It may be higher, maybe lower, but this is the best estimation. And it was just, it was really dialed in. And I saw at the beginning of the presentation, I think there was just a little bit of nervousness. And then, it kind of like you really got the room involved in it, and it became something super impactful and super meaningful for them. And that's when I think that they started to make the decision that this is fair, this is making sense. And even for me, I'm like, this is fair, this is making sense. So I think on both sides, there was some hesitation in the very beginning, to be honest with you. And then it kind of came, then you brought us together, and it was all about the education and just being there to connect. The connection was instrumental in them desiring to do it, and me too. So
nothing beats an in-person visit in my book. But Mark, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on some of the things that you experienced as well?
Yeah, Ben kind of hit it. I mean, that presentation, it's about a 4-hour long presentation in person. So it seems kind of daunting, but really it's just to educate everyone in the room, prospective associates and even principal owners a lot of times on everything. So it's really just educational and conversational is probably the two words I use most often for that. It's not, yes, it is a presentation indirectly, but it's not really something I'm presenting. It's more so to educate them on what's coming if they choose partnership, how it works, what's going on in the industry, how to calculate EBITDA, and why does it matter to grow EBITDA in a business, what it means for the partners in a business when you do so. And then we go through just legal considerations. You kind of talked, one of the things we address most often when we're doing a partnership solution, whether it's an earn-in or a buy-in for that matter, is the legal structure, the legal entity, whether or not it's an S corp or is it an LLC, is it a partnership, is it a C corp, all those things matter depending on distributions, if you want to offer some, at what level. There's a lot of different things that go into that. Attorneys know those things, but you need to know from a business lens how it's going to affect your business and what you can and cannot offer. So that's something I know we went through, Ben, in that process. It's something I always go through with clients and kind of try to get out in front of that, because you might be wanting to do something, but it's not feasible unless you change something. And that change may cause an accounting change, which then triggers another alarm. So there's a lot of things that we go through, but we vet all that out with the clients, and we did that with you, Ben. And then a lot of times associates that are trying to be partners, want to be partners, they may or may not just look at it as an income play only. And that's fine. A lot of them just haven't been a partner yet, potentially. This is their first opportunity. So, they think, well, I'm going to make more money by becoming a partner in business, whether that's 5%, 10%, 50%, whatever it is. That's not always the case, because you've got to think about it. If you're taking out a loan, you're paying off a loan. Even if you do get a distribution, you're paying taxes on that distribution. So you may not actually make any money for the first couple of years until you pay off the loan. And that's very much an educational conversation, unless you're buying into a very profitable business, where then you may have the opportunity to actually make money if there's a distribution that's sizable on a quarterly basis, annual basis, whatever that may be. So, and then we have a lot of clients that are looking to step back from the chair clinically and take on more of a CEO role. So those are conversations we have throughout that process. What does that look like? It's best to do that before you go into the partnership versus after the fact. It's a little more difficult conversation. So a lot of different things that I know, Ben, you and we talked about on a regular basis right out of the gate, to make sure we have everything. So when that presentation's, I said it again, presentation, that educational and conversational 4-hour meeting that we have is everything's laid out. I mean, everything's out in the open. Once again, we talked about it being fair. It's a fun conversation for me, quite honestly.
Yeah,
So,
and you encouraged
yeah.
you encouraged my associates and their spouses to ask questions, and that was really impactful for them because they were able to open up and get some clarity around the things that they were really concerned with. And that aspect right there, seals the deal for me, because I can't imagine going through this and them just trusting me. Plus, it just the level of experience and level of being able to really answer those questions accurately, truthfully, and fully, is invaluable in getting to the final result.
All right. So now that the dust is settled on that whole process, what do you feel was the most impactful thing for you and your team having gone through that process? And is there anything that you would have done differently?
To start, I can't think of anything that I would have done differently. I really can't, because we kind of got out ahead of things and we planned for things so well.
Good.
The absolute most impactful result from everything was the level of trust we established between each other as colleagues. I really feel like this process, even though in the beginning it was stressful and there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of what ifs, and then a lot of they're talking to their own consultants and attorneys and all that. And there was a lot of things. And as it started to come together, that trust was that undercurrent that was slowly evolving. And now that we're there and they understand it, and they know that even moving forward, I've got resources for them. With making sure the dividends make sense, and looking at the numbers and seeing what everything looks like at the end of the quarter. I've got the resources around them that they know they have confidence in me moving forward, and I also have confidence in them because they're putting a lot forth to be able to do this partnership. They're trusting me. And I'm absolutely going to do my best to show up for them in that respect. Really, the overall result that was most impactful was the trust that you guys left here with us. And we still have that trust with you guys too.
It's just so critical that trust piece. Like we can't say that word enough in this episode, in this podcast overall, because it is such a foundational piece. And what we find, and Walker and I talk about this frequently when we're planning things out, is how well do you know the providers in your business? How well do you know your associates? How well do you know your partners? Can you name 3, 5, 7 things about them outside of the practice?
And what goes along with that is the integrity that's kind of dovetails on that. I did what I said I was going to do, and Mark did what he said he was going to do, and it continues to say, okay, these guys are for real. We're really going somewhere with this thing. I believe in not only who I'm working with, but where that we're going as a different entity now.
You just created the perfect segue to my next question. What's the plan for the future? What's next for you?
The plan for the future is, it was funny because I told you I listened, I'm big on inspiration. What motivates me is staying inspired. And it's almost like information overload sometimes, because I'm in so many different groups, and, listen to all these podcasts and books and things, but I really stay inspired. But I think, where I'm headed from here is, really honing in on efficiencies, operations. And it actually is very, you sparked me up with the conversation you had with Aiden recently about laying the base of the pyramid and the foundation, because we're at a really interesting inflection point, because we're at 2 large locations. I like the large footprint thing. I'm definitely gonna be looking at other locations, but we're taking it methodically. We're making sure the structure is exactly how we want it to be. We're finding the right people to help us do that. And I think what's next for me is to finish this build that's next door. So I'm at 31 chairs. and see from there, see what opportunities present themselves, see what my tolerance will be. But I really don't have an end in sight. I'm not building to sell. It's a lifestyle practice for me. I love what I'm doing. Like I'd mentioned before to you, a lot of people that are my age are thinking, oh, they're looking forward to retirement. I'm not. I feel like this is, the starting blocks for me. I've been waiting for this time of my life, all of my life, because now I, like I say, I don't have debt. I have a lot of great people around me. I actually have the best culture that I've ever had, and I'm going to protect that, cultural integrity with everything I've got. And we're finding more A players to join those A players that we have, and continue to learn and grow. You know, just as a leader, as a business person. Still do some dentistry. I still love dentistry. It's hard for them to get me out of the chair in the beginning, but I'm down to 1 day a week in Winchester and 1 day a week in my other office.
Yeah.
And, I want to keep growing. I want to do the best I can with what I've been given. And I have so much gratitude for my parents. I feel like I was raised well. I had great parents. I've had exceptional people around me throughout my life, and I still continue to find these people as my career grows. But it's just the beginning. I feel like I want to continue to grow with this. Winchester is one of the fastest growing areas in Virginia, and we're seeing that. We're seeing 130, 140 new patients a month. In our other location, we're 70, 80 new patients a month, and it's just figuring out how to make that really come together and make sense and have the best possible patient experience we can, and then replicate, copy paste, and I can also credit my wife for really helping me design these offices and stick to a certain template, super clean, super high end, and just keep going in that fashion with each and every single office. I've been really fortunate, and I've got nothing but gratitude for everybody around me that's helped me get here.
Music to my ears. I love, first of all, that you're so excited about your growth and where you are right now, just in your life in general and with your business, but knowing that you're doing this in a reproducible way. I'll go back to, I've done several episodes of this podcast with Aiden Bradley that you mentioned a few minutes ago. And a lot of what we talk about is that foundation. It's that structure. Is it repeatable? Is it sustainable? And does it support your growth? And he always shifts back to people, processes, and patient flow, because that's at the end of the day what it supports. And I love to hear that you are creating things in a mirror image as you're reproducing them, because think about that, what that does for your team in terms of efficiency. Or let's say, and I know as a hygienist, I did some temping towards the end of my hygiene career. When you walk in somewhere and you're trying to learn an operatory, you're a fish out of water, and it affects your productivity. It affects your production for the day. But when you've got a team that can be that streamlined and they know what to expect going from op to op, boy, you're just running like a well-oiled machine. And that's when it's reproducible.
Yep. And I think the main thing that I've finally realized is I've got to create the time and space to be able to do those things. And that's the hardest part, transitioning from clinician to CEO, is, convincing myself that it's okay to be out of the chair, not producing, like crazy. And, I've got to realize I'm going to be working on structures today. I'm going to be talking on Zoom meetings and those kind of things. But that impact I'm starting to see the fruits of that impact, seeing what that does. And it's really taking shape. And I'm really, I don't know if you know it or not, but I'm going to be hopefully working with Aiden soon on some fractional stuff. Really looking forward to that. I've heard him speak a lot of times, and it's just, he's got it. He's got the frameworks and the base of that pyramid. And I really just, it's like we're gassing up, getting ready to go. It's like, so
Yeah.
it's,
You're building the foundation and setting it, and so you can take off from there. And like I said, repeat it over and over. And that's the important part. I come across even on partnership deals, Ben, where it's like, I bought this location, I bought this location, I started this location, and it's great, but not a single one of them actually got to their peak moment, and it's just, they're constantly chasing new revenue with debt that's soon it's definitely overwhelming them. Whereas you've taken care of all the debt at a certain point, and then at the same time you've mastered this location you've got as much out of it, and now you're expanding, now you're growing, now you're taking off once you've built the correct foundation. And I think that's extremely important. I know Aiden echoes that. I see that, and I'm the partnership guy. I'm not necessarily the ops guy, but I see that all the time. So I think you're doing it the right way. And that's why I see nothing but success for you in the future for that.
Thank you.
I want to jump back for a minute before we wrap up today, because Mark, I want to get your perspective and your angle on the whole partnership process that, you took here with Polaris to complete Dr. Tolley's rollout to his team. We kind of skipped that step in our conversation. I want to make sure we highlight that a bit for our listeners too.
Yeah, I know I've explained it probably in some past podcasts and episodes about kind of maybe explaining at a high level, and hopefully you can hear it. I mean, I'm extremely passionate about creating customized solutions because everything we do for our clients is a customized solution. You say, hey, I want to offer a partnership. I want to offer a buy-in. Well, not every buy-in looks the same. Every dollar amount percentage looks different. You're looking at the growth that your trajectory that you're looking at. So we may need to strategize here a little bit differently and look at different solutions. What does your long-term plan look like? You may offer a little less now so you can offer more later. There's a lot of different things that go into that. And that's what I love and I see every single day. And it's that strategy is what's most important. But I mean, ever since the kickoff call that we have with our clients, it's really trying to understand the business layout. What do you have currently? Where are you going? Why are you going there? How fast do you plan on going there? And then what does this look like for you? I mean, partnership today may only be X percent or X dollars, but what's it look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What does the debt look like? Are you okay with the debt? Is your associates okay with the debt if they're buying in a certain percentage? So a lot of different conversations that I know Ben, you and I had on a lot of different things and wanted to make sure we had this all wrapped up before going to the associates and delivering anything for that matter. And we talked about legal structures. We talked to accountants, to make sure, go through a lot of things there. I talked to your fractional CFO to make sure on the financial side of thing, everything makes sense. Then we create the pro forma, obviously, and to lay it all out for both you, Ben, as well as your associates that are coming in so they can see, okay, this is what each year looks like. We're looking at distributions. We're looking at potential distributions. I want to be clear on that because nothing's ever guaranteed, but had to explain, when a business may take a distribution, when a business may need to preserve some cash and roll it over the balance sheet if you're in growth mode, why that's the case, why you might not see 100% every single time. Most associates don't realize that. They just think, hey, excess cash flow, it's mine by X percent pro rata. So it's being able to explain all that to them, I think was important. And that was early on. I had calls with both associates in this case early on in the process to kind of, spend 30, 60 minutes with them each, kind of going through business ownership 101, getting to understand them personally. Why are you looking to do this? Why are you looking to spend money to buy in? It's an investment. It's not a guarantee. So just kind of going through that whole process and then, the rollout. I think the rollout in person is great from an educational and just that conversation with the associates and doctors, soon to be partners. To me, it's exciting. That's the fun part of what I do. It's that rollout. It's very draining for me because it's 4 hours up front in front of going through. But I love those conversations.
And with the level of specialized information that's involved, and I honestly didn't know what I didn't know. As we started to get into things, I'm like, wow. And it's just like this, there's a lot of little rabbit holes you can go down, and we covered them all. And you realize where my comfort level was with the percentage, with the level of the buy-in, with what the future looks like, with leaving room for other partners. And you really explored that, and that really helped me out, a lot to understand. And I'm still learning the whole process. There's so much that goes along with it, but it was just instrumental because it's just such a specialized field, and with the way that you were able to weave in even Ryan's piece with the contracts and the shareholders agreement, the operating agreement. I think we covered all the bases.
Yep. That's the goal, is to kind of take you down all the rabbit holes. Not that hopefully none of them ever get fully seen, but just to know that this is what happens here, this is what could happen there, and have we thought about this? Do we have an explanation for the future partners if we go down this path? And just knowing all these things, because the last thing I want to do is roll something out and it's, oh, we didn't realize this, or, oh, we didn't realize that. It's hard to catch 100% of them, but if we can catch 99% of them, which we usually do, it's like everything's good. You feel comfortable. They feel comfortable. Everyone's happy. And that's the point of it. And what's going to happen if it does go down one of those rabbit holes, you're already prepared. We've already thought about this. We built this into it. We've done this. We're going to do this. If it's this one, and you're ready to go. So,
well, it's the business you've built. It deserves the time and energy that goes into this. It certainly does. And with all these moving parts, it sounds like you've got a great team around you, and you've got a lot to be excited about for the future.
Really do. And I, look forward to working more with you. Hopefully I'll get the chance, have the opportunity to work more with you, Mark, as we grow and as we, develop and, hopefully flourish even more in this area. So I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely, Ben. I'm sure, and I look forward to watching your successes.
Yeah, and I'll be hopefully working with Aiden here soon. So we'll be, we'll stay in touch.
Great. Well, I'm excited to see what happens here. But Ben, Mark, thanks for joining me on the show today. And Ben, thanks for sharing your story. This is something that our listeners asked to hear about. It's very relatable for them, and maybe they're on the edge of deciding to go in that same direction, and they need to hear that this is very doable and it's very customizable in the spirit of fairness and trust and what you want for your own business. We can create what you need. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. I'm very pleased with the way things worked out. Thank you guys so much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. And as always, if you'd like to schedule some time to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered yet that you want to hear about, you can go ahead and send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com. Or you can reach us by visiting our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com. Go up to that Contact Us button, click that, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and be sure to leave us a rating on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube, where you can now also find videos of your favorite episodes. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.